So today we are talking about what you might want to give up for Lent. And after this, you might well want to give up getting absolutely wasted in the middle of the afternoon, because obviously that's something that I'm sure people do very, very often. So this is because I don't know anything about getting wasted, obviously, in the middle of the afternoon. But I've heard that it's a bad thing. I have turned to the incomparable Dutch artist Jan Steen. So we're going to talk today about the effects of intemperance. This is a painting. It dates to 1663, 1665. It's in the National Gallery. It's probably actually one of his biggest, even though it's not that big. It's only, I don't know, 70 centimetres by about a metre or something, so it's not huge, but it's probably one of his biggest and best known works. Right, so the effects of intemperance. Well, the whole scene centres around this lady over to the right of the painting. Let's bring her up a little bit bigger so you can see her better. Here she is. Yeah, slumped over. If I'm gonna be kind, I'll just say that she's a little bit exhausted from looking after all her children, but that's not true at all, is it? Look, she's got a pipe dangling between her fingers that I think may well have been part of the problem. And then if I bring up sort of the bottom of this, hopefully you'll be able to see. Can you see properly? There's writing all over it, but there is some. There's a sort of picnic by the side of her as well. Again, if I'm going to be kind, then we could say, oh, maybe she was just feeding the children a packed lunch and she, you know, had a little puff on her pipe too many and just got a bit drowsy and went to sleep. But if you have a look at the picnic, she's cut off a bit of cheese, she's eaten a bit of bread, and then there's a massive fruit bowl that is overflowing with fruit. There is a sort of a white piece of fruit at the front, and I can't figure out whether that's meant to be mould or not. But then behind that white piece of fruit are, I think, what are either nectarines or apricots, which suggests wealth, because apricots and nectarines were available in the Netherlands in the middle of the 17th century, but they were bloody expensive. And then you've got two huge bunches of grapes leading towards an overturned jug. So I think we 100% know that she has been on the wine all afternoon, as well as having a little bit of a smoke. So yeah, but expensive fruit. Just going back to her, look at her. I mean, she is pretty well dressed as well, which sort of makes this even worse. You know, it's sort of like, okay, she was wealthy enough to know better. If wealth brings knowledge, then she shouldn't have been behaving like this, because people who wear shot silk skirts and jackets that are fur trimmed, and if you notice a string of pearls, I mean, they do not behave like this, or at least they should not behave like this. So we have got a wealthy woman who is completely neglecting her children. She's slumped over, stoned and drunk in the middle of the afternoon is the suggestion. Her kids, what are they doing? Well, they are absolutely running amok, aren't they? This little boy behind her, if you can see, he's actually just filching her purse from her side. So he's taking the opportunity. Now, this is actually a Dutch proverb. Opportunity makes the thief is one of the Dutch proverbs, one of the many Dutch proverbs that are explored in this painting, because as with most Dutch art, you cannot take this at face value. Actually, I'm going to turn comments off, sorry, because you probably can't see the image too well with the comments on. So you can't take this at face value. The Dutch absolutely loved a riddle, especially if there was a sort of a moral code to detangle, and so this is full of such puzzles, and the contemporary audience would have taken absolute delight in unravelling them all. So there he is. So opportunity makes the thief, and she has given him the opportunity. So what of her other children? Well, yeah, they're not behaving very much better, are they, actually, while she's rather inebriated. So this young lady, who I think we can take to be her eldest daughter, is actually, if you can see, she's got a goblet in her hand, and so she's actually feeding wine to the parrot. Another Dutch proverb, which is basically all about blind emulation. So, well, maybe it's not a proverb, but it's a comment that parrots will copy whatever without thinking about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So this parrot is very, very happily drinking. So beware of blind emulation. And if you have a look at the youngest daughter, I think she may already be going down the path of her mother. Do you? Slightly unfocused. Is she perhaps slightly squiffy? I think she is. There's a curious aspect to this work. I don't know whether you have noticed, but if you have a look between the parrot and the eldest daughter, is a pig, and that pig is snuffling roses. Actually, that little pink thing in front of him is the head of a rose that this young man behind, he's one of the older children as well, is throwing at him. So this guy, see if I can bring that up a little bit larger for you. Yeah, there you go. So there you go. He's got a beautiful, abundant armful of roses, gorgeous, gorgeous pink roses. And what's he doing? He's decapitating them one by one, and he is throwing them down for the pig to eat. So that, you might think, okay, well, what's that about? That makes no sense. Well, it makes sense if you know that actually the proverb pearls before swine in Dutch translates as roses before swine. So essentially what this is saying is, yeah, this family, they have got all of the wealth, they've got all of the privilege, they have everything that they want, but it is completely and utterly wasted on them because they don't recognise it, and if they did recognise it, they don't actually even know what to do with it. So pearls before swine in Dutch, roses before swine. And then we've got the other 3 children. So there are 6 children in total. My goodness, maybe no wonder she just had to have a little tipple. Her children, to be fair, they don't look terribly badly looked after. They just look like they need a good lesson in discipline, because there's another 3 who are very gleefully feeding a meat pie to a cat. And what this is saying is basically, you don't feed meat pies to cats, and if you continue, to feed meat pies to cats, then you will not have any meat pies left for yourself. It's wasteful, and it is completely ridiculous. So that's another aspect of the painting. To the far left, so I'm just going to bring up the whole work again, just so you can sort of get your bearings a little bit. So to the far left, you have another couple sitting serenely under a pergola. So out of the way, not at all engaging in this melee of chaos and naughty children. So on the far left, you have actually, I think we can assume, the father of the house, who has a young lady on his knee. Probably this is meant to be the maid. Maids rather unfairly, very unfairly, get a bad rap in Dutch art, and a sort of short code, is that the right word? Yeah, shorthand, code or shorthand for someone who's up for it, who's fair game, who's available and who's willing and who's always going to be flirty and naughty and, you know, and I think this is supposed to be the maid who is, I think she's sitting on his lap, isn't she? And they're sharing some wine and some food together. And he is, of course, completely and utterly oblivious to the chaos that is abounding around his drunken wife. And that's not a good thing, and that's not a good thing on obviously many levels. These children are growing up to be rather naughty children, but he's also neglecting to notice that there is actually real danger here, and the real danger comes in the form of fire. So just look again, that pipe is dangling very loosely between her fingers. Is it about to touch her skirt? If it does touch her skirt, that's not good. That's not good. That skirt could go up at any moment. And then over to the left, as we're looking at the image, there is a brazier. And actually a broken pipe, I think, just in front of it. And that brazier too, actually, that kind of looks like it's smouldering. So you sort of get the feeling that at any moment that skirt could definitely go up. And fire was to be very seriously feared everywhere. But in the Netherlands in the mid 17th century, everything was made of timber. So this is the implication here is that this isn't just a bit of household mismanagement, but that it's incredibly irresponsible in terms of the entire community. If they do manage to survive a fire, I'm afraid Jan Steen is suggesting that there is no redemption for this family, because just take a look at this. What's she got hanging over her head? She's got a basket with what in it? Well, it's a crutch. And actually it's not terribly well defined, but at the top of the basket you can see some twiggy things perhaps over to the right hand side, and there's a birch twigs. So the crutch is sort of the tools of a beggar, and the birch twig or the birch brush is what was used to flog criminals with, so it's sort of quite symbolic. So the suggestion is if this family carry on in the way that they are behaving at this moment, you know, the children are all going to rack and ruin following the parents' examples, and they're all going to end up out on the streets or in prison, or both, but not at the same time. So there we go. The effects of intemperance. Have you decided now what you might be giving up for Lent? Not great, but there's a bit of a twist to this though, because Jan Steen, fantastic artist, but he was known to have had a very, very big family, 6 children or even more. So the suggestion is that maybe this is him sort of not exactly painting an accurate family scene, but the suggestion is that his house was at times just as chaotic as this, and also, even though this is a moral painting, with a moral sort of tale behind it, and this is the effects, and you mustn't do this. By all accounts, Jan Steen absolutely loved a drink himself, and he actually owned a tavern, so he supplemented his income as an artist with this tavern, and yes, it would seem that he was perhaps one of the most willing and happy and prominent. That's not quite the right word, but he was one of the biggest customers of his own tavern. So maybe there's a bit of a twist to this, I don't know. Perhaps it's a bit of an in-joke. But the effects of temperance from 1665 can be seen in the National Gallery in London. So there we go. I shall stop sharing, turn comments back on. And yes, so I do hope that I've given you something to think about giving up. I don't know whether I'm suggesting you give up alcohol and smoking, or whether maybe it just might be an idea not to do it to the extent that this lady did in this image. So thank you very much for joining me. You've given up smoking again this year. And how many years in a row have you given up smoking, and did you ever start again? You see, it's quite easy, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to give up. I'm going to give up falling off the back of running machines. Anyway, and if you missed the beginning, then you missed a treat. Thanks very much for joining me. I will see you all next week. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And yeah, happy Thursday. Thanks.